Learning a helicopter in DCS can be pretty daunting. Not only do you not have the controls typically that is in the real aircraft with this magnetic brakes and so on, but you don't have that pilot in seat feel of the inertia. Nor do you have typically hours and hours of training through the manuals and so on, or a scowling instructor pilot watching over your every move and hopefully correcting you where you go wrong. So there's a couple of training missions you can do, there's YouTube videos, etc, etc. But when it comes to the practice side, a lot of the training missions has you go through a bunch of text and things first before you can actually get to flying. And a bunch of the instant action missions usually have wind. Now, wind is a natural thing and you're going to have it on most of your flights. But while you're getting to grips in an accelerated time frame, I recommend you actually fly without wind. So you can go onto the web and go and look for certain training missions that maybe don't have any wind. But today I'm giving you tips on how to create your own that you can do in a few minutes. And you can at any point later on just go into missions and load up whatever mission you might have. Just look for the right folder. And you just need to do it once you go into mission editor, and you can also edit those parameters in the future. So click on mission editor, wait for it to load. You want to go to a new map. You can choose any of the maps that you own. So I'm just going to pick Caucasus, being one of the free ones, and light on resources. Pick any coastal airport. Okay, you want something that's low altitude, temperate weather. So typically coastal airports are low altitude. Same reason I wouldn't recommend using the Nevada map. A lot of those things are really high, and the default temps can be really hot, which means that you have a lot less lift. Good for training later, not at the beginning of your DCS Helo experience. You're going to click on Add or Modify Helicopter Group, and you're going to put it somewhere near the airport. Just left clicking there. Now, you pick the helicopter you want. So in this case, I'm choosing the new H-64D Apache. You want this one. Any of the other ones that are grayed out are AI helos. You want the yellow one. Now you're going to change it from a AI of a skill level to player, meaning you'll actually spawn it. Then you're going to change the type of this little waypoint to take off from runway. It's going to mean you're hot starting, already aligned with the runway. Great stuff. So you can practice your takeoffs and get to flying really quickly, and you don't have to do a full startup every time. In payload, you can go with what the default is, or maybe choose one of the more combat loadouts that you might actually be flying with in a lot of your missions. Once you click on it there, or you can right click and do the normal kind of edits, just check your total weight isn't too high, that it doesn't start getting near to 100% unless you want to train with being really sluggish. Once you're done here, you can change the libraries as well if you really want. Once you're done here, click back to root. Importantly, click on the weather tab, date, time, and weather. These should be defaulted something like this, but just double check that the winds are all set to 0 and 0 turbulence. Ideally no fog or dust, and that it is daytime just makes your training life a little easier. Finally, click the play button over here. It will ask you to save. You can say yes and put in a file name, which I advise doing, because then immediately you have the option of saving that file and going through missions later on and reselecting the saved file. You don't have to do this multiple times. And what you can just do is you go into the mission. So I'm going to actually choose no in this case. I don't need to save this file. Going to start. It's spawned up, it's telling me there's 0 wind, etc, etc. And the temperature is a nice and moderate 20 degrees at sea level. Right, I can fly, and now I can set off and do my thing. And say I've now horrendously messed up. I can't control this thing to save my life.
Rotor RPM low.
And I'm getting those warnings, and I invert myself over and die. Okay, great stuff. What I can do now is just left Alt B to get the briefing window again, and click fly. Or you can go escape, select roll, say back to spectators, and do all that jazz. Let's wait for DCS to reload, and I'll be back at spawn. Hot on the ramp, and yes, seeing that. If you maybe get too many flame effects and eventually slows down, left shift R will restart the mission from scratch, and then of course you just select your roll again. Okay, I'm going to escape out of this. Just quit. Back at the mission, I'm going to go to, well, I mean, I suppose you can review your tracks if you really want to see how you flew. But to show you how to extend this mission, say I want to change it so I don't even have to take off. I can just be in the air and start flying immediately. So I can change this to, instead of take off from runway, have a turning point or flyby point, but I'm actually going to make additional slots. So I've got options in this mission on where to start. So I'm going to click on the Helo, left Control C, left Control V. You can't see it, but it's made a duplicate. And this one I'm going to set to just quickly get out of the way. So I'm going to say take off from ramp. So there you can see it's jumped. And that would be if I wanted to start from the parking lot. Already hot. Do you know what? I actually want to start in the air, so I'm going to change it to turning point. Now, if you're going to start in the air, it's not going to start pre-aligned in a direction. So, these are my starting parameters. I could make it lower or higher and start slower or faster if I wanted. More importantly, I need to click Add, and then click on a waypoint somewhere. This will be its starting direction. And that very first initial setting here in the first waypoint, 0 out of how many waypoints, is my starting conditions. What I'm going to do is I actually want to edit and just shift this to align it up nicely with the runway. So I've got a good reference point while I'm flying around to fly straight. So I'm going to say edit. And that way I don't click to add new waypoints, and I can just drag this into position more or less so it aligns with the runway. And if I wanted to add more waypoints, I could just say add, click, click, edit, and then I can go and click and drag them again. And you can either select waypoints then by being in edit and click on a waypoint, or clicking on these little arrows here. Deleting one you can do, of course, and you get the impression. You will see when I copied the player-based Helo, it automatically changes any future ones to client. And since I'm in edit mode, I can click on this Helo again, and you'll see this one's automatically on client. Now, a way to differentiate them as well, just click on the thing, maybe give it a name that you can easily differentiate. So I'm going to call this one runway. Could also call it the Helo, or whatever else I wanted to. And this one I'm going to call air. Fly the mission, save the file if you want to reuse it in the future. And in this case, I now have the choice between my air start or my runway start. Different menu, doesn't automatically open to the Helo. I need to just pick which one. And from there I just say OK and fly. And now I have a mission where I can just continually practice flying, restart very quickly, have 0 wind conditions, just get used to Helo flight. As my skills progress, I can make it set it up at high altitude airports, or just take off high at altitude, take off with heavier payloads, take off in hot conditions, heavy winds, side wind, you name it, practice all the different regimes. But for a basic start, I've got everything to understand the very basics of Helo dynamics, how things aren't symmetrical and even in all directions, even without wind. So that later on I can apply just the additional bit of this is what wind does, this is what altitude does. Hope this helped you guys. This is Volk. Good practicing.